This is OwlUp, where learning happens in minutes, not hours. For a deeper journey, explore all our courses at owlup.co. Now, let's dive in. Welcome back to Chapter 2 of our series, Unusual Budgets in Unusual Times. In this episode, titled The Great Depression's Peculiar Saving Strategies, we'll explore some creative and resourceful ways people managed to save during one of the toughest economic times in history. So, let's dive in and uncover these fascinating strategies together. Only about 1 in 5 employees can clearly state their company's vision. Yet leaders keep pouring time into strategy decks and town halls. In this episode, we'll step inside that gap between "we have a vision statement" and "people actually feel led." Most leaders assume their job is to sell the vision harder. But if people can't recall it, the problem usually isn't volume, it's resonance. Employees remember what connects to their daily decisions, not what fills a slide. Vision only becomes energizing when someone in a real meeting, facing a real trade-off, can say, "Given where we're going, this is the move that makes sense." That's why two leaders can use almost identical words, yet one team feels switched on while the other drifts. The difference is how specifically the future is sketched and how often it's tied to concrete choices, what we start doing, stop doing, and refuse to compromise. In this episode, we'll look at how effective leaders translate a distant future into near-term meaning, hiring criteria, project priorities, and the way success is celebrated, so the vision stops being a slogan and starts becoming a filter. So instead of asking, "Do we have a vision?" a better question is, where does our vision quietly win or lose inside the organization? That usually shows up in small, unglamorous moments. How you justify a headcount request, which messy project you personally review, or what gets airtime in Monday stand-ups. Think of each of these like API calls between the future you've described and the present you're running. If the responses are inconsistent, people default to local logic, not shared direction. Our job is to trace those calls and see where the signal gets scrambled. Most leaders underestimate how much ambiguity erodes the pull of a future direction. People don't resist where you're going as much as they resist not knowing how today's effort ladders up. The brain quietly asks 3 questions before it will invest real energy. Can I see it? Can I influence it? Can I win in it? If any of those stay fuzzy, motivation bottoms out, no matter how often the vision is mentioned. This is where specificity becomes a performance tool, not a branding exercise. High-performing leaders turn abstractions into decision pictures, short, vivid snapshots of what a normal day looks like if you're successful. Not a grand speech, just concrete scenes. For example, Nadella didn't just talk about cloud first, he repeatedly highlighted stories of small teams shipping cross-platform features and learning from failure. Those stories put edges around an otherwise broad direction, and people began to recognize themselves inside the future. Research backs this up. When people mentally simulate a detailed future, who's there, what's happening, what they're doing, the dopaminergic system responds more strongly than to generic goals. It's not hit 20% growth, it's you walk into a review, and instead of defending last quarter, you're demoing 3 experiments that found new revenue. The more sensory and situational the picture, the more the brain tags it as worth pursuing. At the organizational level, this changes how alignment works. Instead of cascading a slogan, you cascade a small library of future snapshots tailored to different roles. What a successful quarter feels like for an engineer, a salesperson, a customer support rep. The words at the top stay stable, but the stories at the edges get translated. Think of it like refactoring a large code base. The overall architecture doesn't change daily, but you keep updating individual modules so that everything compiles against the same future release. Leaders who do this well don't just ask, "Do you know where we're going?" They ask, "What will be different in your work when we've arrived?" and stay curious until the answer is concrete enough that someone could recognize it when it shows up. Think about how this plays out at different levels. A frontline manager might say, "In our future, customers never have to repeat themselves." That's still abstract, until she adds, "So within 6 months, Every support rep will see a full interaction history on one screen, and our callback rate will drop below 5%. Now a rep can walk into a shift and know what moving us forward looks like today. Depression-era savers treated their whole town like a layered toolkit. One family might split their efforts 3 ways: a small stash of bills at home for emergencies, a share in the church's relief fund, and a cow they co-owned with cousins on the edge of town. If prices swung or a job disappeared, at least one layer usually still worked. Others quietly diversified within their own walls. A seamstress might keep extra fabric not just for sewing, but because she knew cloth could be traded for bread faster than a distant check could clear. Coal haulers sometimes accepted partial payment in kind, half cash, half future favors, because keeping a customer warm all winter beat chasing a perfect but unlikely profit. In some neighborhoods, kids became tiny portfolio managers, storing marbles, bottle caps, or spare buttons they could swap at school, knowing that a lost nickel at home didn't have to end the game. Value still lived in their pockets. Crisis-era saving hints at a blueprint for today's digital lives. When money feels shaky, people don't just retreat, they redraw where value lives. In a world of banking apps, game currencies, loyalty points, and tokenized assets, we're quietly running parallel ledgers already. The open question is who writes the rules? Do we accept opaque platforms, or design systems where communities can see, edit, and fork the code of their own future safety drawers? Depression-era tricks hint at a modern question. If your bank app blinked out tomorrow, where would your next month of choices live? Skills, trusted groups, and tools you own outright behave like quiet reserve lines. Your challenge this week? Map 3 non-money reserves you already have, and one you'd like to build before the next shock arrives. This was OwlUp, your daily step forward. To keep learning with structured courses and more insights, go to owlup.co. Until tomorrow!